Coach Marion, how you doing?
How are you?
Not too bad. And while I have you here, I'm very curious. So you've lived in worlds that a lot of people haven't experienced or have kept separate. You have military service, bodybuilding, coaching, judging, promoting. What is the thread that runs through all of that for you?
Um, discipline. Discipline and consistency because in all of those worlds it's required. Um, the military definitely gave me the foundation for it, but and because the military is so structured, so detailed oriented, um, a lot of by the book, it really translated well into the other things that I do. So I'm very structured, very detail oriented, disciplined, consistent, and it just kind of all evolves into one thing.
Discipline and consistency. That's so interesting. So I think on your site it said you spent 22 years in the army and served as a drill sergeant.
Yes, I 22 years in the army. I served as a drill sergeant, and when I retired as a first sergeant.
Sergeant, what experience do you take from that and sort of apply it to your life now? Does that happen?
Yeah, it actually does. So in the military, a lot of people think, like I said earlier, we're very regimented. And a lot of times people see military people as not being flexible, sometimes lacking empathy because we are so regimented. But while I was in the military, it actually helped me dive more into being more empathetic and actually sympathetic to a lot of the things that's going on. I mean, you have to instill the discipline, the structure, the organization within your subordinates and also have a good working relationship with your peers and your superiors, but at the same time, you can't lead people without having that empathy, without being able to understand that everybody comes from different walks of life. And so that is also something that translates into what I do as a competitor, what I do as a coach, because everybody that walks through my door walks in at a different chapter in their life. So I have to adjust who I am, or not who I am, but how I am with those individuals because of those things.
So empathy and leadership. So how does empathy show up in your work with your prep clients?
Well, as I tell my clients all the time, life happens. You can't stop life from happening. But when it comes to my clients and life happening, I never want to be that coach that when my clients come to me and they're having a bad day or something's going on with their home life or they're struggling through their prep, I'm never going to be or want to be that coach that says, well, suck it up and deal with it. So I have to be empathetic. I have to understand that while I want them to do well, and this is a part of the prep is a part of the process, you can't control things that you can't control. So when you can't control the controllables, that's where I need to step in and be empathetic and help them understand how to navigate around that, stay on course. And if they can't stay on course because there's just so many things going on, then sometimes we have to pivot and shift. And it's okay to do that because, as I tell them all the time, the stage is always going to be there. But you have to be able to manage life. You have to be able to manage sometimes the obstacles that come with life. And sometimes you just need to take that woosah moment and not feel like you're being pressured. I don't want to be the coach that pressures anyone to step on stage. I don't want to be the coach to pressure anyone to push through a prep if they're mentally just not there because it just makes
Mhm.
for a really bad prep. It makes for a bad process for them. And ultimately, everybody that I coach, as much as they say, I only want to do this once because it's just something on my bucket list, I want to make that experience enjoyable for them to the best extent that I can so that they look at that first competition and say, "Wow, that was really good. That was a good prep. I thought it was gonna be worse than what it was. I wanna do this again." And so far, that's what all my clients do. They come to me with that, "I only wanna do this once. This is my bucket list." And then as soon as they come off the stage, like, "Okay, so, what's the next one? When could what are we gonna do now?" That's my thing. But empathy goes a long way in prep work to me. And sometimes people just don't a lot of competitors don't get that because sometimes you get a coach that's so driven, that that process becomes more about the coach than the competitor.
becomes more about the coach or even the outcome, just like
Yes,
stepping on stage
exactly.
at all costs,
Yes.
winning at
Mhm.
all costs. These things, that is not an empathetic way to go about it. And you bring up some really cool things that I talk about with my clients, both in the psychology realm and otherwise. Sort control the controllables. So I'm curious, what are the uncontrollables that come up and interfere the most with people you've worked with?
Them getting sucked into social media and looking at other competitors, looking at, oh, I found out this person is going to be at my show. And then they become consumed with following that competitor. And then all of a sudden it's, I don't think I'm going to be ready. I'm not here. I'm not where I want to be, or they're looking at other people that are in their category, may not be at at the competition that they're going to be at. It could be from a whole totally different federation, and they just become consumed with it, and you cannot control that. And like I tell them all the time, you're watching people post on Facebook or social media, whatever platform they're using, and you don't know when that picture was taken. You don't know when, what you don't know the physique that you're looking at. You don't know if it's now, you don't know if it was 2 years ago, you don't know anything, but you're getting consumed with it. So that's one of the controllables that they can control, but a lot of time they get sucked into it and it becomes uncontrollable for them. It's almost like it's just consuming, So I think I do pretty good with my clients because I'm always posting videos to our videos and you know different reminders and inspirational things to our group chats and things like that to remind them to just focus on themselves and not things to the left and right. Stay focusing ahead of you. So
I got okay. So here we go. Social media, benefit or burden?
it can be both,
Tell me about
and
both.
I say that it can be both because it depends on how you apply it. So when it becomes a burden, it takes you away from what you're supposed to be focused on doing. Um, you could be working out and, you're looking at social media and you're doing a specific exercise and you see somebody else doing that same exercise on social media, but they're lifting way more weight than you. And then you feel like I got to step my game up, so it can become a burden when you let it consume you, but it can be a benefit from an informational standpoint. You have a lot of competitors that um, use social media. They look at it, and as I tell people all the time, there's always different ways to do things. So you may be lifting a certain way or whatever. I just recently made a comment about making the mind muscle connection. And the way I may explain that to a competitor or somebody else may not translate, but when they hear it differently on social media, explained a different way, it makes sense to them. So it can be a burden and a benefit depending on how you utilize it actually.
Which definitely makes sense. I mean, when you utilize it purely for social comparison, absolute detriment. Like that is
Mhm.
just that is not it. But like you said, you can't control what your clients hear whenever you're trying to give them a message. But if someone
Exactly.
delivers the same message in a different way, social media, their friend, another coach, whatever, and it lands for them, we can't control that, and that's a benefit to our athletes whenever that message does land.
Yes.
So you had mentioned, if we back up a little bit, athletes sort of mentally not being there during prep. So if an athlete is going through it, let's say it's their first competition, what are the signs to you that an athlete is not mentally there? Maybe we need to take a diet break. Maybe we need to pause prep. Maybe we need to consider pulling out altogether. What are the first signs that you see?
Um, I listen to, when I talk to my clients. I listen very intently. When I get their emails, I don't just read the words on the email. I read between the lines of what they tell me. And it's usually a string of things of not being able to sleep, feeling completely overwhelmed, feeling completely stressed, work. It's a whole bunch of different things. And then when they start saying consistently that, their workout wasn't that great, to me, that's a sign of there's some things going on mentally you might be going through burnout, and so I deep dive into those things with my clients, and I ask the very sometimes uncomfortable questions of them, and they're never a question where I'm providing the answer to them in the question, but more the question of you're gonna provide me the answer by me asking that question that doesn't give you "Yeah, you're right, I am feeling a little bit tired." No, that's not I just gave you the answer. So, I it's there's it's never gonna be a question like that. So, I get very, very pointed, and that's one of the things that my clients tell me a lot is like, "You're not afraid to ask the tough questions of us. You're not afraid to be firm with us," and again, that firmness still comes with empathy, but because sometimes, when you're being firm with someone, you could come off as very aggressive, but then other times you need to come off as firm, but caring. It's like having a parent relationship with your kid, you know, firm but caring. So those are the things that I look for. Just it's like a degradation in in their normal performance, but the degradation starts from a lot of the external factors that they're dealing with that leads to how they're training, how they're thinking, how they're processing things. And it's like, okay, I think you need to take a break. And sometimes they push back. No, no, I'm fine. No, you're not, and you as a coach, you have to be okay with saying, I know what you're saying, but I know what I'm seeing. I know what I'm hearing. And for your safety, for your health, for your well-being, we need to take a step back.
Hmm. So so to me, there's a type of athlete sort of self-talk going on there. So what are the most successful athletes
Mhm.
that you work with? What is their language like even when they're struggling or when they're digging?
It's transparency, first off. And I think the most successful athletes are the ones that are honest with themselves, and to me, that honesty comes before I have to say something to them. It's like being self-aware, knowing what you're capable of, not overextending yourself. And so when they come to me with full transparency and say, coach, I've been, having a rough time for the last, week or the last couple of weeks, a month or whatever. And I really think I need to take a step back. To me, there's self-awareness and recognizing what you can do, what you can't do. And I don't like to necessarily use the word can't, but more so what you're capable of doing, because a lot of people sell themselves short with the word can't versus being capable. And being capable means that you know what you can rightfully take on and dedicate yourself to and commit to without pouring so much of yourself that you overwhelm yourself and don't know how to figure out how to manage everything. So I think those are the successful athletes, and the athletes to me are even more successful when they don't feel like they have to push not only to please themselves but to please others. And when you commit to a show, let's just say you commit to a show and you say, I'm going to do this show, and you start telling everybody, I'm going to do this show in August. And so you've been prepping and training for this show in August, and you've told everybody that you're going to do this show. And then all of a sudden, life hits, life happens. And rather than you recognizing that I cannot do this show, I'm not going to be ready, I need some more time, I'm mentally exhausted, and everything else, you continue to push yourself because you feel this obligation not only to yourself, but to everybody else that you've told that you're going to do this show. So, I always say, tell my clients, prep, don't commit. And when I say don't commit, I mean don't commit to a specific show. Just prep
Hmm.
and let the prep lead into a show. But when you commit to a specific show, that adds more pressure. So recognizing those things is, I think, makes a competitor way more successful in this process than overextending themselves and then holding themselves to a goal that they know they can't reach at that moment. Not that they can't ever reach it, but not at that moment.
I feel the discipline exuding off of you. Have you always been this disciplined?
Yes, yes, I have. Yeah, I actually have. I hear that a lot. Even when it comes to me being in prep, people tell me all the time, I don't know how you do this. I don't know, how you push through these preps and things like that. And it's like once I commit to something, and not necessarily, as I said before, not necessarily a specific show, but the process. You know, I've committed to the process. So it's easier for me to stay disciplined to a process because of what I want the outcome to be. So there's not a lot of deviation from me when it comes to me committing to something. Once I'm there, it's like I'm there. And yeah, I've been told that I'm extremely disciplined.
How much of that do you equate to your service in the army, and how much do you equate to that being just personality, your own personal sort of characteristics?
Says probably um maybe 50-50 or 60-40. And 60-40 being the army and the 40 being just my characteristics. And if I had to say 50-50, it would be, equal. But I grew up in a household where it was pretty disciplined as it pertains to education and things like that. My grandmother was extremely um firm when it came to the expectations. So, because of that, even when I went into the military with that mindset of, you know, this is what I have to do. And once I commit to something, my mindset is failure is not an option. And I never see something as a failure. I see it as a learning tool. I see it as something, if I don't succeed the first time, let me go back and revisit. Let me go back and look at what I could do better to make me succeed the next time I do this, because if I don't succeed the first time, I'm not giving up. I'm just gonna go back and see what I need to do better to be successful the next time I attempt it. So it's always been that way for me, and the military just kind of hammered it home. And when I retired, it's just like it transitioned right into my you know post military life.
Can I ask you a very deeply personal question? What made you commit to the military?
Well, that is a very good question. So when I graduated high school, I actually had a track and field scholarship. Um, and at the time, even though, I had the scholarship and there was money, towards the scholarship and everything, based on the environment that I lived in and the fact that my grandmother was already struggling, to raise the grandkids and things like that, I unfortunately made an adult decision for her and my mom that I shouldn't have, in that while I've already seen how we struggled, I don't think they can afford even the money that had to be put towards it outside of the scholarship. So I decided that I was going to forego that scholarship for track and field, and I was going to go in the military. And my mom was also in the military. And I went to live with her because I was raised by my grandmother in Chicago. But I went to live with my mom after I graduated high school. And while I was living with her, I always tell her, I said my stepdad was like major pain. It was just like living, it was just it was just a really rough, I was like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I didn't think moving here was gonna be like this," and, while I was living there, my intention was to move with her and go to college from there in, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg. So my intention was to go live with her and go to college from there, but in reality, my stepdad just kinda made the environment so miserable for me that I was just like, "No, I'm ready to go. I can't stay here and go to college." Now, ironically, because he was military too, I don't know why I decided being under those strict rules would say, well, let's go in the military. But that's what I ended up doing. And so that's why I went in the military. It was I felt like it was an opportunity for me to kind of, see the world. I had gotten the job that I wanted, in terms of the military. And it was just something that I was like, okay, well, I'm only going to go in for these 5 years and I'm going to get out. And then 22 years later, I was still in.
Wow. What a trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. So this so I want to relate this to bodybuilding. In some ways, that choice by your environment was almost made for you in some ways, and I'm curious, like with bodybuilding, your philosophy, do we choose bodybuilding or does bodybuilding choose us because it fills something inside of us? What do you think?
I do think it's both because for me, I chose it and it chose me. And when I say that, my very first competition was while I was in a military station in Korea. And at the time, it was on a military installation, and the only categories they have for women in this particular show was the bodybuilder and then the bikini. No figure, no anything else. So um I was told that I couldn't do it. And of course, that's the last thing I ever want people to tell me because it's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna show you kind of thing. And I was told that I couldn't do it. So in that instance, I chose bodybuilding um to prove something to others and to also prove something to myself because I was the kid growing up that was underweight. Even though I wanted to be physical and athletic, there were limitations, even though I played sports in high school and things like that. And even when I came in the military, I had to gain weight to come in the military because I was underweight for the job that I picked. So I had to go on this thing of putting on weight and everything. And I struggled when I first got to basic training in terms of the physical, being able to do the push ups and all that stuff. And those are the kind of things that just kind of made me hungry to say, I'm not gonna let this defeat me. So in Korea, when I was told that, oh, well, you can't be a bodybuilder, you're too small, you don't have the structure, you don't have this or that, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna show you. So I chose it. But then at the same time, in terms of a sense of community and family, and people who are like-minded in the sport, it chose me because it fills some voids of being around people who were like-minded, being around people who are supportive, and also at the same time being around people, and it depends on where you're at in the sport that want to see you succeed, and you guys just build this bond. And even though you may compete together, you may compete on the same stage, all of those things. At the end of the day, you're still like a little family. There's no animosity held because I competed on a stage with you and I placed higher or anything like that. It's still at the end of the day, we're still a good community of people. So I just found my network as it pertains to bodybuilding. So it chose me in that sense. So it's both actually, and I think that it's probably the case for a lot of people. Um, it's just a matter of which one weighs in more.
Mm. And at what point in your life, is it weighing in? And it can weigh more in different points. Um, so I'm curious. You bring up community and family and you were talking about this lovely thing. Like we can be competitors, against each other on stage, but we can support each other, when we're off stage when we're doing these things. Is there a particular person or relationship that you sort of draw on within the community, like in terms of a bond that you've built?
Not really, because that I think that I kind of touch. I think the community touches me in different ways, and different levels, and different positions. And so I take my hat off and put on a different hat for different things. But um, as it pertains to like a specific person or anything like that, No, I just really I love honestly, I really do. I love seeing people exceed. I love seeing them win. And for me, the winning is not necessarily a pro card. It's not placing in the top 5. I love hearing the stories of
Mhm.
what got them from where they were to where they are. Because to me, that's the biggest win. We all want to get the pro cards. We all want to, become the top name in the sport or the most recognized in the sport. A lot of people want that. And that's never been me, but I love seeing the stories. And anytime somebody has posted something on their Instagram or social media and I'm reading about where they started and how they got to that stage point or whatever. That's the thing that really hits me the most. I mean, yeah, they placed, they won or whatever the case. That looks great. But the biggest win is that whole process leading up to that. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that. So nothing, no one person has touched me more. I think the community as a whole is what encompasses me. It always feels like when I go to a show, it's just like a big old hug, from all aspects of the show.
You're speaking my language. Process, journey, the love of just seeing people sort of exceed their past limitations or the limits they honestly put on themselves. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. So let's reconnect with your journey. You had that first show in Korea. Connect the dots for me. Connect from your time as a competitor to a judge and then a promoter. You love the sport so much that you now want to help people get on stage and succeed. Connect all those dots for me.
Yes, so when I competed, for the first time, like I said, it was because somebody told me that I couldn't do it. And it was more so me proving it to them and to myself. So I did that, and then there was this long break, and it was a break where I just, I was no longer competing. I was just working out, but a lot of people kept asking me, do you compete every time they saw me? And I was like, no, I don't. And it's like, well, you should. And then that kind of sparked that bug for me to get back on the stage. So I did that, and then in the process of me doing that and seeing like the processes behind the scenes and how, as a competitor, you know, some of us we look beyond our our current situation, our current self. So as a competitor, anytime I was at a show, I wasn't always just looking at the show from a competitor standpoint. I was looking at it from a judge's standpoint. I was looking at it from the aesthetics of the show, things of that nature. And so as people talk to me beyond that, it's like in the OCB, Marjorie um Thrash asked me, she said, "Have you thought about being a judge?" And I was like, "No, I have not thought about being a judge." And so she kept talking to me and she asked me, if I wanted to be a judge. And then finally I was just like, sure, I'll do the judge's training. And then sitting on the other side of the table gave me a whole nother perspective of the operations and how the process works and everything. And it also gave me a different perspective of myself as a competitor. Because being on the stage looking down at the judges is totally different than being at the judges table looking up at the competitors. You see different perspectives, different angles, all of those different things. Exactly. And so that became that aspect of it. And then of course, I've, being coached and everything, and coaches have coaches. And so my coach at the time, Donovan Strong, he had coached me for about 8 years. And my last show that I did with him was a Jordan Cup, and he was retiring. And so everybody's like, "Well, you can coach yourself." And I was like, "I don't want to self coach." There's always, as much as people do it and some people are successful with it, it's not that I don't think I would be successful, but I felt like I would shortchange myself because I'm pouring so much into everybody else and other things that I didn't feel like I would have the time or energy to do it for myself. So then it was, "Well, have you thought about coaching?" I'm like, "No, I don't wanna coach bodybuilders," I'm one, and even though I don't consider myself a prima donna, I've seen it in the sport and it requires a lot, but I ended up jumping into coaching, um, because, Karen Foles, one of our competitors on the team, convinced me to do it, and the first person that I coached for competition was my son. So I said, well, let me coach him and see how this works. and it was a success. And then all of a sudden, the competitors started rolling in. So, then Marjorie asked me again about promoting. And I was like, no, I don't want to promote. I don't want to promote. But eventually I did. I took over one of her shows that she promoted in Tennessee, and I did that for I did my my first show that I promoted last year November, and it was a success. So everything kind of led into another, but it was me being in that position in that moment that made me see the next moment, and having people believe in me that said, "You can do it, you should do it." And then, of course, I always gotta defer back to my better half. It's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because it's not just me doing it. It's not an I thing. It's a team thing, and it's a team thing with not only my spouse, but with people within the community, with the competitors, all of those things. So I don't ever want to jump into something when thinking that I'm going to accomplish this by myself. So yeah, it was always one step leading to the next. And of course, I always feel like if somebody comes to me and asks me, have I ever thought about doing something? They see something in me that I may not have seen in myself, or they may have put it out there and it's not something that I considered. So it means a lot to me when I have people that see my potential and believe that I can do something, whether I take on the task or not. But it's the fact that somebody's watching me from the outside and seeing it. And the one thing that I always get told is the leadership that I display and the care and concern that I display and the ideas and the things that I want to make better. And as far as the sport is concerned, I always say that when I retire from the sport, from a competitor standpoint, I always still want to be connected to this sport and continue to give back to it. And so these other things are leading into that next chapter when I'm no longer competing.
It's almost like it's all laid out like a plan. Um, it it's really interesting to me, though. You seem like a very and I'm sorry, again, I'm throwing assumptions at you. Tell me when I'm wrong. You also, on top of being a very disciplined first person, you seem like also a very present and grounded person, like, in terms of just being here in the moment now. Talk to me
Yes.
about that related to being an athlete, related to yourself, but talk to me about being present.
You're not wrong in your assumptions. So I think your the psychology thing you have, it's working well. So
Thank you.
yeah, I've always been told that I operate in the here and now. Um, I try not to focus on the past because the past keeps me from being in the present. Um, I do look forward to the future, but then at the same time, looking forward to the future is a planning process for me. If I live in that futuristic moment too long, I miss things that are happening right now. So, from a competitor standpoint, I don't like to put things ahead of myself. I just like to kind of focus on where I'm at. And even though things are happening or things are going to happen in the future, things have happened in the past, I feel like if I let myself get too wrapped around those things, that causes stress. It causes you to be overwhelmed. So I don't like to live in those spaces. Being present in the moment keeps me aware, it keeps me focused, and it keeps me, as you said, grounded. I'm a very, very humble person. From a competitor, from a coaching standpoint, as a person, I'm very humble. I don't like to live on other people's accomplishments, even if I am a part of those accomplishments. That's theirs and theirs alone. I may have helped you get there, but I want to celebrate you in that moment, not what I did to help you get to that point. That's just never been me. So it's always good, in my opinion, to be present, not to be present and be present in the moment. You tend to appreciate a lot of things. You can't appreciate what you don't have, and to me, that's focusing too much in the present. When it happens, then I'm gonna appreciate it. But I can't appreciate getting a new car that I'm planning to get in 2 years when I don't have it now. So,
That's such a no, that's such a cool, like, appreciation does happen in the present. Like, you can't appreciate something that was like, "Oh, I'm looking off in the distance, like, here it is, I'm appreciating it now." No, you can only appreciate what's in front of you, and it's a really beautiful sentiment. You also mentioned humble. You mentioned humble and not comparing yourself to others, but I'm curious, are you competitive with yourself? Like, internally? Is
gosh.
there just a refinement? Talk about that.
Ooh, yes, I am extremely competitive with myself. Um, that's probably one of the things if I had to say, um, if someone were to ask my husband that same question, he would probably eye roll and go like, "Every day. Oh my god," you know? And the thing is, I don't like to settle. I feel like at my one of the sayings that I always say is, "I've been created I'm an imperfectly perfect person." So, I'm never going to be perfect. I celebrate and I love my imperfections, but that's never going to allow me to stop working on me and improving me. And I've been asked before, like, well, why can't you just be happy with who you are? My response to that is always, I am extremely happy with who I am. I love who I am, but self improvement never stops. And when it does, there's something that you have given up on. You've given up on yourself when you think that you can no longer improve. So I'm very competitive with myself. And that comes back to when it comes from a competitor standpoint, that comes back to controlling the controllables. I can't control who comes to the stage, but I know I can control the person that I bring to the stage. And so that means not bringing the same person that I brought to the stage the last time. It's always striving to be better. So I am very, very competitive with myself. It's sometimes I talk about myself like, not in a negative way, but like, I'm not gonna let you beat me, that kind of thing. But I'm talking to myself. So yeah, very competitive.
When self-improvement stops, you've given up on yourself. Is there a point that there are diminishing returns on that? Can that mentality go too far?
It can. It really can. And to me that those diminishing returns happens when you become obsessed with it. And obsessed with it meaning um you lose focus and you lose sight of what it really means to enjoy life. Um and you forego a lot of things about enjoying life because you're chasing that self-improvement. Um and to me the self-improvement it should almost naturally happen. Whether it's from a physical standpoint, from being in the gym, whether it's from a nutritional standpoint, whether it's from a life standpoint, it should just kind of naturally happen. It's something that you recognize that you want to do and you take those measurable steps towards it. But when it becomes a point where you're foregoing other things, doing things with your family, doing things with people, doing things for yourself that's not related to that self improvement, you're gonna start getting diminishing returns because now it's all consuming.
So from the competitor perspective, all consuming, you see a competitor, they're nailing it on prep. Training's going good, numbers are still going up, weight's coming down, diet's on point, no blips on the radar in terms of deviating from the plan. But in your communications where you have that deep empathy, you realize they have said no to everything outside of bodybuilding. They have shut
Yes.
down their spouse. They have shut down their friends. "Oh, coach, I'm laser focused. I'm locked in. Everything is a no for the next 6 months." What is your conversation with that person?
My conversation with that person is you need to take a step back and you need to realize that the people around you didn't choose this life. You chose this life. And you can't expect them to understand, number one, that it's no to everything that they want to do with you. You can't expect them to understand that. And you can't expect them to basically sit on the back burner and you do nothing with them, and then when it's all said and done and the show's over, the prep's over, it's like, "Okay, I'm back. Let's do XYZ." You got to learn how to make that balance and fit those things in between there. And my clients are, used to tell me, "Well, I don't go anywhere with my friends. I don't go anywhere with my family because, I'm meal prepping. I have to eat my meals, and I can't go anywhere with them because of what they're going to be eating." And my first question to them is, "Why? Why can't you?" "Well, I'm gonna wanna eat." I said, "Well, that's a discipline problem. That's not a you being able to go out and hang out with them and still enjoy life, you know? You can still do these things." And so then the question becomes, "Well, how do you do it?" I said, "Well, for me, I kinda eat that way anyway." I said, "But you do your meal beforehand. You don't have to, you know, I can't do anything with you." Or and some of my, competitors will, come to me and say, "Hey, coach, I have XYZ going on." I just had a competitor come to me and say, "Well, I have this event going on. I can't bring any food in with me. What should I do?" And I'm like, "Okay, eat before you go or whatever. And if they have vegetables and protein, chicken or whatever, eat that. Oh, okay, that's great. You find workarounds, but to completely close yourself off from people because you're in this bodybuilding world is not healthy. It's not it's just not healthy. So those are the conversations I have with them when they say I'm like, okay, first of all, you need to not shut down. You need to stop saying no to everything, and you need to realize that those people around you, those people that love you, those people that care, those people that are supporting you did not choose this. When they said that they would support you on this bodybuilding journey and this prep and everything, they didn't mean that to include that you were no longer going to interact with them. So you have to find that balance.
Mm, that balance is so hard for some people, but I think sort of
It
what
is.
you're sort of dancing around is bodybuilding has to be sustainable. It is not
Yes.
sustainable if you cut huge chunks of your life out for large periods of time. Those relationships, they may still be there when you're done, but they might be a little dinged up if you continue
Yeah.
to push them off and say no and just turn your back and focus on what you're doing. And I want to bring this up since you brought them up before. So, what does it mean to have a spouse who supports you in all your endeavors, and how does that relationship sort of sustain what it is you do?
I am actually blessed to have a spouse who is into health and fitness. He's competed before, but he does it currently, but he still works out consistently, religiously. So I always say he's my hubbyger now because he's backstage with me. He's making sure, hey, you got a workout to do today. What's your workout? Things like that. And he, I had to I too had to find that balance of thinking, I can't do this, I can't do that, or whatever the case. And him wanting to go to dinner, and he's like, "Hey, well, I want to go to dinner, but you can only eat so much, and you can't do this, you can't do that." And I'm like, "No, no, you know, there's workarounds for this, So he supports me 1,000% in what I do. He supports me 1,000%. Um, I always tell him sometimes a little too much because when I want to just say I don't feel like doing it today, he's like, "No, you got to work out. You need to, have you practiced your posing? Have you done this?" So I'm blessed in that regard, but I know that a lot of people aren't in the same situation. When you have someone who's active, who lives an active lifestyle, who eats pretty healthy, it kind of makes this process of competing a little bit easier for you. But the people that don't have that, it's harder for them because they're trying to navigate these relationships and get people to understand why they have to do this, why they can't eat this, why, those kind of things. And then, they become saboteurs and like, well, if you eat a little bit, you'll be fine. It won't hurt you. And that it becomes a source of contention. I can't just eat those cookies because you say it's gonna be okay. Those are the things I do try to help my clients navigate that, run into those issues and everything. But as far as my spouse is concerned, like I said, I've just been blessed in that regard because he's empathetic when he needs to be. and at the same time, he cracks the whip when he needs to crack it. Yeah, so, I'm like, "I don't feel like working out today," and he's like, "Well, don't nobody care how you feel," you know, uh,
What is
when
future
you
you
get
gonna think?
Yeah, exactly, he's just like, when you get on stage and, you don't do how you wanted to do or whatever, you're gonna think about them times when you didn't feel like working out and you didn't do it. And you like, if I had just done this or whatever, So he said, he always tells me all the time. He said, when you're prepping and understand that you have your limitations and what you can and can't do, what you can and can't eat, and things like that, but at the same time, still enjoying your life. He said, but you need to, when you're in that moment, you need to be in that moment and leave nothing left to question. And so anytime I work out, that's the mindset I have. Anytime I'm, eating a meal, that's the mindset I have. And then there are times when I don't have to have that mindset. So it still comes down to a balance. But yeah, everybody, if it's crazy because if I show up at a show, they're so used to people so used to seeing him that if I show up at a show, I'm not competing at the show. I'm there either as a coach, I'm there because I'm helping with the show, and the first thing they'll say, "Well, where's your husband at?" Well, because they're used to seeing him. I'm there if I'm somewhere at a show, he's somewhere at a show, but, he's very supportive.
Very, very cool. I think this would be helpful for competitors. It takes a certain amount of vulnerability to let someone into this part of your life. How can we cultivate more of that vulnerability with our spouses and partners so that we can make bodybuilding more sustainable?
I think that we have to not feel like we're in it by ourselves, because if you're with your partner, with your spouse, even though they're not physically in a lot of cases, they're not doing that workout with you, they may not even be eating that meal with you, they're still going through that process with you. Because when you're in that prep mode, prepping for a show, I mean, people need to be realistic and they need to be honest with themselves that those people that love us and care for us, they don't have 100% of us. They have whatever we have to give them at that moment. Um, so you have to know and understand that you're not in it by yourself. And sometimes, actually, not sometimes, most of the time, that communication, that education, helping them understand what it's like, helping them understand what you're going through, um, why you may even be cranky. Not that you should just take your crankiness out on people, but while when you get those carbs cut or whatever, I've always when I was doing this by myself, before my husband competed, before my son competed, before my daughter competed, when I would get to those points where my coach was be like, okay, we're gonna start your cut. I knew what that was gonna feel like. So rather than me just go through it and then start lashing out or whatever because I want some carbs, I'm like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to start cutting. If I'm a little cranky, please don't take it personal. It's not you. I promise you it's not you." We have to be okay with being transparent and helping them understand. And once they understand, when those things start happening, the questions then start coming because you've educated them. I don't have to tell my family, that I'm cranky because I got carbs cut. If they notice that I'm cranky, the first thing I say is, "Are you in a cut? Did your coach cut some carbs?" That kind of thing, because I've already educated them on that. So being vulnerable to me just really means being open with those that you love, those that are supporting you, and you being realistic and being honest with yourself and knowing that while you're going through it physically, while you're actually doing the prep, while you're actually doing the work, those other people are still going through it with you, just not to the same degree that you are. And when I say when you're in a household with people, whether spouse, kids, or whatever, when I say it's a team effort, it is really and truly a team effort because they have an expectation of you, you have an expectation of them. But a lot of times as competitors, our expectations of the people that are in our house, we have higher expectations for them than they have for us because we just expect them to understand this is what we're going through, and you need to this is what we're going through, this is what you need to understand, and this is how I'm gonna be. But we have to give that same grace to them, you know, um, and not close ourselves off, you know. Sometimes when you want to, you know, my kids, my husband, I want to watch a movie, and I'm like, okay, well, I know I want to go to sleep, but I'm gonna do my best, even if I might fall asleep 30 minutes into the movie. I'm at least gonna make the effort, make the attempt. So just be give the people around you grace and mercy, understanding that they don't know what you're going through, but educate them so that they can at least have a little bit of an understanding. And when when my son and daughter did their competitions and I coached them for that, that's when they got an understand, oh, this is what mommy means when she says I'm gonna be cranky. This is what she means when she said this or whatever. So there's a little bit of buy-in, um, as it pertains to your spouse and your partner. And I think we lose sight of that. And sometimes we take it for granted.
Mm. What did it feel like to see your son and daughter on the stage for the first time?
Oh my God, I cried. I did. Because my son, he when he went to college, he came home, and when he walked in the door, his physique had completely changed. I was like, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "You look like you can compete." And he kind of tossed it out the window. And then he eventually came to me and he says, I want to compete. And I said, are you sure? And I, told him what it entailed. My daughter was the same way. When she came to me and she wanted to compete, I told her no right off the bat because she was in college and she ran track. And I was like, it's too much going on. But once your track season is over, you'll be getting ready to graduate. We can go ahead and put you on stage. And we did. But to see my kids who used to laugh and make fun of me, it's like, you know, every time I wake up in the morning, I smell sweet potatoes because you put them on the night before, whatever, just all of those different things. And then having them literally come to me and tell me they want to compete. And it was never something that I pushed them into. I said, if that's what you want to do, it's going to be your choice to make, but I'm going to be there to support you the entire way. But when they came to me and told me that they wanted to compete and they wanted me to coach them, um, it was just it was surreal. And to see them on stage and how good they looked and how many compliments they got, I was just like, wow, those are my kids. And then my son and I competed in the same show together. That was crazy. That was crazy.
Well, I am chasing that moment, but with your mentality, I don't want to push my sons are 5 and 4 right now. They're not stepping
Mhm.
on stage anytime soon. I got, a decade or so, before they do that, but, not pushing, but modeling. It seems like you have
Mhm.
modeled discipline, empathy, and I wanna come back to something else you said. It seems like it's empathy all the way down. You have empathy for your clients and for your family, and by you being vulnerable and transparent, you're cultivating empathy in everyone around you. So really it's just empathy full circle.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's the empathy is a huge word for me. It's a huge and it means so much. And I'm a very feeling kind of person. I'm not a touchy-feely kind of person, but I'm a very feeling person. And even just outside of my family, outside of the bodybuilding community, just socially, I'm very, very empathetic. And I just feel like if we showed more of it, so many things would be so much better. So yeah, I that it drills down all the way for me.
I think I got one more question for you. You got time for it?
Sure.
Fantastic. To be honest with you, I only got through 5 of like my planned 10 questions. Uh, this conversation's been fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So your brand is Velvet and Steel. What does that duality mean to you?
Okay, so my husband actually came up with the name of my brand. And when he I asked him, for the name of, the business and everything. And initially he said it's velvet wrapped around steel. And I said, "Well, that's too long for a business name, so how can we shorten that?" And he said, "Velvet and Steel." And I said, "Hmm, that's different." And I said, "Well, why did you choose that?" And he said, um, "Every soft person has a hard exterior. They have a hardness and strength to them, and every strong person has a soft and weakness to them. And we want to cultivate all of that. So for those who are very strong, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, they also have a weaker side, and we want them to tap into that. It's those that are weak, that those that are soft, we want them to tap into their strength because the two together makes you a more balanced person. So, as from a fitness standpoint, people come in and they're stronger than what they think they are.
Mm,
Um, and because they're stronger than what they think they are, but they don't know how to tap into it, it also affects their confidence in progressing. And for those that are stronger, it also doesn't allow them to be vulnerable to where if I need you to drop down and do a little bit less, the ego gets in the way because you want to be that strong person. So we work in we intertwine all of that. So when he gave me the explanation of the business name, I was like, "Oh, I really like that," because everybody has a soft side, everybody has a strong side.
mm, and you gotta bring them together. Coach, what a
Exactly.
beautiful message. I've really enjoyed having you. I swear I could continue going on talking with you, but I know you're probably busy. Where can people go if they want your coaching services or if they wanna sign up for one of your fantastic shows?
So, my website is www.velvetsteel.net. My phone number is 410-499-1865, and my email address is velvetsteelfitness@gmail.com. I'm also on social media. Instagram is Velvet Steel Fit, and Facebook is Velvet Steel Fitness. I promote the OCB Natty Nights show, which this year will be October 17th in Nashville, Tennessee. So the registration is already open. Last year we had 78 wonderful competitors. The show was great. So I know some of those competitors will be coming back this year. They've already told me. And I look forward to seeing some new faces as well. So by all means, come out and join us. And if you're not competing, you can help with the show or you can just come out and, see the show from a spectator standpoint. But either way, it's going to be a great show. So that is how you reach me, and yeah, we're still gonna be that disciplined and consistent coach and detailed oriented, all of those good things, so this has been amazing. I really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Coach. It's fantastic. People reach out, go to the show. I'm going to try to plan to go to the show. This has been great.
Awesome.
Truly. I look forward to chatting again and maybe we could run it back here in a little bit.
Absolutely, look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.